Welcome to Liner Notes. My name is David Bixler. Vibraphonist Simon Mouller's new recording, Isla, reflects the raw landscape of the islands off the coast of Brittany that shaped him in his youth. In this episode of Liner Notes, Simon talks about his journey from France to New York, as well as his transformation from drummer to vibraphonist. Simon, welcome to Liner Notes. Good to meet you and speak with you. And
Thank you for having me.
You have a new recording out, Isla, that just came out with your quartet, independently released. The record sounds great, features mainly original compositions, and then the standard You Go to My Head, and then a Mercer Ellington tune. And you're joined with pianist Lex Corton, bassist Alexander Claffey, and drummer J.K. Kim. Is this a working band?
Since we recorded this album, we've done a bunch of shows together, and we have a few more lined up this spring. And it's been fun. It's been fun.
You know, a couple of questions for you. Your first record featured Dana Stevens and another saxophonist,
Morgan Guerin.
Yeah, and then the record after that was a trio, and then here you have quartet with vibes and piano, which struck me as a very unique sound because, you know, both of those instruments kind of occupy a similar strata, you know, like in the sonic space. And my first question to you is, was it the nature of the compositions that you wanted to use this specific instrumentation?
I think I was writing with a certain sound in mind. I do enjoy the kind of compact sound that piano and vibes create together because it enhances each of the instruments. So if you have vibes doubling piano or piano doubling vibes, it's the same thing. It makes the piano sound bigger and it makes the vibe sound bigger. So it kind of creates like a third instrument, you know? A lot of it is created by playing usually unison at the same octave or at the same register, so that it creates a blend in the frequencies, and it, you know, that kind of technique is used a lot when it comes to doubling bass line, like piano and bass. That's been used so many times, and I guess I don't know, alto saxophone and guitar, you know, like certain sounds like that can be like signatures of some music sometime, you know. And I wanted to kind of try to create this blend on this record with piano and vibes to have kind of a bigger sound without adding too many instruments. So quartet, it's not too many. It's just 4 people, but if you have certain composition techniques, you can make it sound a little bigger, or at least intend to.
Yeah,
you know?
No, I think you were very successful in that regard. Was looking at your schedule, and I know in trying to set this interview up, you were in Europe, and looks like you have a bunch of stuff in the States, and then you're going back to Europe. Will you be traveling with this band, or varies?
We will, but it's going to be on the West Coast in May. Yeah, it's going to be in May on the West Coast. That's when we have some travels planned towards the end of the month. Yeah, towards the end of May.
Okay, cool. And then I want to touch on the music. You are from Brittany, if I am reading this correctly, and much of your music is inspired by the landscape, by the sea, and you're very specific about some of the tunes, Empress of the Sea, for example, and maybe speak about that, you know, how that it shaped you as a person. I plead ignorance, so I didn't know that there were islands that France had off of its coast, but it sounded like you had spent some time there, and it shaped who you are, and it, you know, as an artist, obviously it has shaped your music.
Yeah, I grew up in that northwest of France, which is called Brittany, and it's a very beautiful area, and there's a lot for the eyes for sure, and also there's a certain peace of mind there because there's not much happening, besides nature. There's not much happening, so you have a lot of time to just chill and enjoy what's around you, which is sometimes in like today's world of society, it's a little difficult because there's always things happening, things, especially in New York, everything has to be fast all the time, and when you work, especially on the music scene, you always have to be moving on to the next thing, and sometimes it's, taking in what's around us is we take it for granted, sometimes. So this place, yeah, so, because I grew up there, I used to spend every holidays, every time we had some time off at school, whatever, we used to go up there and spend some time. So I guess it was kind of a big part of me. And then I moved to the States 11 years ago, and I didn't spend too much time there afterwards, but during the pandemic, as a lot of people, I went back and I reconnected a lot with that place, and I see it from a different perspective now, because if you move away for some time and then come back to a place, then you get some kind of bird's eye view perspective on the whole thing, and you realize sometimes how much beauty there was at the first place that you were before,
Sure.
And sometimes it's needed to go away in order to realize that. So the COVID time was a really good moment for me to realize that and reconnect with that part of who I am. And it also means family, like it means like it's kind of an echo to not just the landscape, but also to the people that surrounded me during my time there, and so it's
Was this music written during that time when you were hanging there during COVID?
Some of them, yeah. I would say like half of it was written there. The other half was written when I was back in New York after COVID. But I would say the core of the beginning for this music was there. Yeah.
And so with the pieces in the liner notes in the press release, they're attached to nature. Are you thinking about, I'm going to think about the sea and you're creating music, or does this idea come to you and you think, oh, this reminds me of what I saw when I was a kid? How's that work for you?
This is the part where the press people don't like it, but I'm still going to say it. Sorry.
Go for it.
No, because I just rather be honest with this, and it would be terrible to lie about this. But in general, when I write music, I don't really think of anything. I just try to do, and it's like playing. If I start thinking too much about something, or if I want to say, or if I say like, oh, let's write a piece about this. So for me, it doesn't work too much. It kind of blocks the whole flow of things, but if I do it, I know that the subconscious, I wouldn't really know how to talk about this precisely because it's too complicated and I don't know how it works, but creativity for me a lot of it comes from the subconscious mind, which is the part of you that just acts on the feeling and things like that. So you don't really know what's happening, but you're just doing it, and a lot of this for me comes from, I think, the subconscious, which is the part that we're not supposed to know. We're not supposed to access that, You just do it out of a gut feeling or something, but you don't really know. That subconscious is fed by a lot of things. It's fed by who you are, by what you like, but by where you grew up, so I'll just say this. I like to think that I'm influenced by the things around me. Now, what's actually happening when I'm writing the song, I have no idea. You know what I mean? I have no idea, and I don't think I want to know. I think it's nice to not know and to just stay in that feeling of just doing instead of like thinking. You know, because the mental sometimes doesn't have anything to do with it with all this. Now later on, I do like to try to give a good title. You know, so once the piece is written, and once I've played it a couple of times, and once I kind of have a little bit of a perspective on it, because it's always the same thing. You need perspective on everything. So once you wrote it, the night of that you just wrote it, you could be like really into it and be like, oh, this is amazing, and then be all high about it. And then the next morning you wake up and you listen back, you're like, wait, this is terrible, you know. So that's called perspective for me, you know. And then you listen back a month later, and then you get another perspective. Actually, it's not that bad. This part is cool. And then a year later. And then I called, for me, I always think about this, but then I called some of those tunes that passed the test of time, you know what I mean? Which means like in 10 years, I'm still gonna, it's like a time capsule. It's gonna put you back in that feeling. Those tunes for me are the ones that pass the test of time. And the best way to arrive at these types of tunes is to give it as much perspective as you can. So whenever I write, I'll write something in the first, flow of things, and then the next day I'll listen back, and then a week later I'll listen back, and then a month later I'll listen back. And when I have enough perspective, I'll be like, okay, this can be this title, you know what I mean? But I think a lot of it needs perspective. It's the same for the playing of, you know, like when you're improvising or whatever, when you're workshopping this as you grow as a musician, you need time to realize what you like and what you don't like, you know. I hope this answers your question.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, man. You alluded to the fact that in Brittany, when you were describing it, you said not much is happening, and you've probably told the story before, but how does a young person in that part of the world get connected with jazz music and, you know, become so fluent, you know, with the language, you know, there, and then on an instrument like vibraphone, which is, I mean, you're not the only cat, but, you know, like compared to tenor saxophone, it's, you know, not as much in the forefront.
Sure. Well, I was a drummer first for a while, and I grew up in a city, and not like in the countryside. Like I said, we used to go there on the holidays and things like that. But like an hour away, there was a city called Nantes, Nantes, and this is where I grew up. And they had a conservatory, middle school, high school, and all that. So I did go to a conservatory. I studied mainly classical, but I was also a drummer, and I played in jazz bands and things like that for a while, for like 12 years or something, like during my whole time there pretty much, or 10 years or something, yeah. And after that, you know, I think I did the 5-week, the summer program at Berkeley. My dad,
excuse me, did you do it as a drummer or a vibraphonist?
I applied as a drummer, yes. Okay. And then I got there and I switched to vibes during the summer camp, you know, because there was too many drummers, and I realized it just wasn't for me, you know.
Okay.
Even though I love drums so much, there was a big part of me that just really wanted to improvise, and I had basically just maybe started like a month before the summer camp to like kind of mess around and just play some scales on the vibraphone. But so I had some technique from the classical studies, but I had no knowledge whatsoever on anything regarding harmony or melody or jazz standards or anything, you know. So it was like an entire new door, and I had no idea what was happening. But it was really exciting because, you know, at that time when anything that someone shows you is new, so it's you just learn like a bazillion things every day, and it's just, yeah, it's very exciting. Also, as a drummer, I had heard a bunch of things, so I had a lot of things in my head. I just couldn't reproduce it. I just couldn't like make it happen on the instrument yet because I didn't have any knowledge whatsoever. But like I feel because of like after being a drummer, it was much easier because I had some sort of already time feel and a couple of ideas in my head that I knew I was going to go for. So the 5-week summer camp was really the beginning of a lot of things for me on the vibraphone, you know. And then after that, it gave me a scholarship, and then I came back after high school to do the 4-year degree, you know. Yeah.
Okay. I've heard often people that I've encountered that end up playing vibraphone started as pianists, and that might be more common. I don't know. You probably know better than I do. And I really haven't heard of someone switching from drums to vibes, even though, obviously they're both percussion instruments and maybe what you would study in classical. But I'm wondering, do you think that your time, like when you were pursuing jazz on the drum set, has that affected how you play? Do you think that gives you like a different angle, a different perspective to your playing because you were a drummer and how you're approaching the instrument?
Oh, 1,000%, massively. Yeah, I'm so thankful for that. Actually, it would be a whole lot different if I hadn't done that. Because I really still think as a drummer on pretty much everything. Because everything is time. Like everything is the most important thing. I'm sure you've heard that a million times already. But like the number one thing is rhythm. And that's the first thing that people connect with. That's the first thing I connect with when I hear music, even if it's a ballad, even if it's rubato, even if it doesn't matter. Like time is everywhere, and time is what really matters in the end, So the harmony, all that stuff, it comes along, I think, But the rhythm, if you play drums for a while, it's really gonna give you. And I was always kind of meant to play drums because when I was a kid, I was like, one of those like always hitting everywhere. I was dancing also a lot, like to like all the music from the TV shows and things on the TV. I was always like, whenever there was something kind of happening, like dance that I was really enjoying. Anything rhythmic, I was really enjoying a lot, And my mom used to play a lot of American music also at the house. She was playing a lot of classical music, but also a lot of like, Earth, Wind and Fire, James Brown,
stuff that was grooving.
Yeah, blues, some Michael Jackson, things that were happening, So I really had that in my ears, and I think that's really important, because that's what really jazz is, It's dance music, and it's like, it used to be dance music,
right?
And I think that there's still an element of that in some jazz today, and that's really what I always seek, No matter how complex it can get, having that kind of like dance to it is important to me, at least, So I think that's why I haven't been a drummer before that. It was really it was crucial, I think. Yeah.
Curious, after your time in summer camp at Berkeley, you go back to France, and you say you live in a city. Was there a scene where there are older jazz musicians that like you could be your mentor?
Not really.
No one had
really.
records. Yeah.
No, we had a couple friends, like of my age that were into jazz too, So that was helpful because we could do it together, So we could. But in terms of like older people who had a kind of a knowledge of tradition, not so much, Like, yeah, it was more like young people just trying to play jazz,
Yeah.
But at least I had them, so that we could have fun together and. Yeah.
Very cool. Question about on the recording, it sounds like at some point there's some kind of effects that you're putting on. Are you playing like an electronic instrument, or are there pedals that you're like going through it at some point? There's one track, didn't write down which one it is, but in particular where there's stuff at the end.
Well, I'm playing an acoustic instrument on the record. I've always played acoustic vibraphone. Now I have an amplification system. It's basically just like something on an upright or a guitar, or it's like a piezo mic on every bar.
Mm-hmm.
And this amplification system goes through some pedals. Yeah, but it's very light. It's like it's a reverb and a very small delay. Not much going on the effects thing, but a lot of it can come also from. I don't know. I do some whistling things sometimes, and people think it's an effect, but it's not. It's just whistling,
yeah.
Or I also sing with the instrument, even though it's not something I do on purpose. sometimes it can create some weird sounds. People think it's a pedal, but it's not.
Okay.
I just have those two pedals.
That was cool. Yeah. Is what I hadn't heard. I mean, I thought it was very tasteful. I just wanted to ask about that.
It's mostly for the EQ. To be honest with you, it's just to give a little more low end to the instrument. But I really wanted to sound acoustic. I just wanted to have a little fatter sound in terms of the low end and mid range. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you do any teaching?
Yeah, I really love teaching. Whenever I get a chance, I really love it. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't teach in a school, or I taught last year in the conservatory in the Netherlands, and it was like mostly like residencies. So I would go like once every 2 months or something like that, once every month, and it was really fun. But I do a bunch of like private students thing. I really enjoy teaching ensembles. Yeah, anytime I get a chance. I've done some teaching through festivals whenever we play at festivals. Sometimes there's like master classes organized around it.
So what is next?
Well, at the moment we recorded a second trio record back in October.
Oh, great! Who's on that?
The same trio as the first one, which is Luca Alemano and J.K. Kim.
Mm-hmm.
And we recorded that in October, and it's in October 2022, and it's going to come out in October 2023.
Okay.
And that's also all standards, and so I'm choosing the takes at the moment. Starting to work on it. I think we're gonna probably go into the mixing studio like in a month or two. Yeah, and the first single should come out in August, I think. Yeah.
All right. The last thing I want to ask you, this is self-released. Where are you interested in pursuing a label or having a label pursue you, or have you seen what's been offered and you thought, I want to maintain control? I don't see any benefit from, passing my music through a different conduit. Maybe explain a little bit about your rationale for self-releasing.
Well, I had never done it, so I wanted to try it. Like the first 2 records were through labels, and yeah, I don't know. I just really wanted to try it and see how it goes, what the process is, and everything. And also, yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of labels out there for sure, but a lot of them don't really do anything. Like, no offense to any labels, but it's like it's difficult to find a label where you get advantages as an artist, and it's like, so I know there are some labels. It's just there's a lot of also labels that don't really help you. It's just tough as an artist to find labels that really will help you. That's for sure. And now that being said, I'm not like close to any labels or anything. I just haven't found one that's like yeah. And it's a relationship. It's like a label has to believe in what you do, believe in your music, understand it, like it. So sometimes it could take time to find such a thing, so hopefully I will. I mean, the trio albums have been coming out on First Sound, and that works for us because, it's all standards. There's no original music on there, so it definitely works for me, and it's a good deal, But whenever there's original music involved, it's a little more tricky, so I want to take some time to find the right label for that.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Well, Simon, I thank you for your time. The record is Isla. Available wherever you can find jazz music. Sounds great, and congratulations on the recording, man. I wish you all the best. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Van Doren Reeds and Mouthpieces. Be sure and check out the Van Doren Advisory Studio in New York City for all your sound sculpting needs. Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Arlen's Good Beer in Bowling Green, Ohio. Sound by Marco Mendoza. The theme music is No FOMO, Mofo by yours truly. Produced by David Bixler. Be sure and subscribe to Liner Notes wherever you find your podcasts. If you like what you hear, I ask that you consider supporting Liner Notes financially. You can do this by going to the Liner Notes tab at davidbixler.com. Thank you for your consideration.